Hello, and today I'll be reading Chapter 7 of City of Ember. It was the printing that sparked Lena's curiosity. It was not handwriting, or if it was the neatest of most regular handwriting she had ever seen. It was more like letters printed on cans of food, or along the sides of pencils. Something other than a hand had written those words, a machine of some kind. This were the writing of builders. And so, this piece of paper must have come from a builder's too. Lena gathered up the scraps of paper from the floor and gently pried open Poppy's fists and mouth to extract the crumpled wads. She had put all of this into the dented box and carried it into her room. That evening, Granny and Baby were both asleep. By a little earlier, a little after 8. Lena had nearly an hour to examine her discovery. She took the scraps from the box and spread them out onto the table in her bedroom. The paper was thick, with 3 C's. At each torn edge, there was a fringe of tangled fibers. There were so many little pieces, and one big piece with so many holes it was like lace. The chewed bites were beyond saving, and it was almost paste, but Lena spread out the big, lacy piece and saw one at the edge of it, which was intact, still a column of numbers. She collected the dry scraps and puzzled them out for a long time, trying to figure out where they'd fit into larger pieces. Once she had arranged them, she as well as she could, this is what she had. This office period of years, perhaps made for Iha city, as full 1 XP Riv Ip work to Star marked with E by R Didge 3 and down in verb to edge upper 8 lower. 4 axe to butter fine door of Kirky hind small steel. Pan the right rem a open do. 5 oat stocked with ne ent back on s eat. 6 oozy opes low tur head down us ask and assist over rat. 7 approx 3 hours doesn't follow pat. Lena could make sense of only a few words here and there. Even so, something about this tattered document was exciting. It was not like anything else Lena had ever seen. She started at the very first word at the top of the page, instruct, and she suddenly knew what it would be. She'd seen often enough at school. It had been of instructions. Her heart began knocking on her chest like a fist at a door. She had found something. She had found something strange and important. Instructions for something. But what? And how terrible Poppy had found it at first and ruined it. It occurred to Lena that this might be what her grandmother had been talking about for so long. Perhaps this was the thing that was lost, but of course, knowing what had been lost, Granny wouldn't have recognized the box when she saw it. She would have tossed it out of the closet just carelessly as she tossed everything else. Anyhow, it didn't matter whether this was the thing or not the thing. It was a mystery in itself. Whatever it was, Lena was determined to solve it. The first step was to stick scraps of paper down. They were so light that a breath could scatter them. She had a little bit of glue left in an old bottle. Painstakingly, she put a dot of glue on each scraps and pressed one onto another and pressed her precious remaining whole sheets of paper. She put another piece of paper on top and set the box on top of the to flatten everything down. Just as she finished, the lights went out. She had forgotten to keep an eye on the clock on her windowsill. She had to undress and get into bed in the dark. She was too excited to sleep much that night. Her mind whirled around trying to think what the message she had found might be. She felt sure it had to do something with saving the city. What if these instructions were for fixing the electricity or for making a movable light? That would change everything. When the lights went on in the morning, she had a few minutes before Poppy wakened to work at the puzzle. But there were so many words missing. How could she ever make sense of such a jumble? As she pulled out her red jacket and tied and frayed her knotted laces of her shoe, she thought about it. The paper was important. She shouldn't keep it to herself. But who could she tell? Maybe the messenger captain? She would know things about official documents. Captain Fleary, Lena said when she got to work. Would you have time to come home with me later on today? Just for a minute. I found something I'd like to show you. Found what? Asked Captain Fleary. Some paper with writing on it. I think it might be important. Captain Fleary raised a skinny eyebrow. What do you mean important? Well, I'm not sure. Maybe it isn't, but would you like to look anyway? So that evening, Captain Fleary came home with Lena and peered at the bits of paper. She bent down and expecting the writing. Full? She asked. Axe, rem, and expected the writing. Full? Aren't? What kind of words are those? I don't know, said Lena. The words broken up because Poppy chewed on them. I see, said Captain Fleer. She poked at the paper. This looks like instructions for something, she said. A recipe, I suppose. A small steel pan that would be to cook in. But who would have just a small, perfect writing? That's the way they wrote in the old days, said Captain Fleer. It could be a very old recipe. But why would it have been kept in a beautiful box? She showed the box to Captain Fleer. I think it was locked up in there for some reason, and I wouldn't lock up something unless it was important. But Captain Fleary didn't seem to have heard her. Or, she said, it could be for a school exercise, someone's homework that never got turned in. But have you ever seen paper like this? Doesn't it look like it came from someplace else, not here? Captain Fleary straightened up. A look of puzzlement came over her face. There is nowhere but here, she said. She put both her hands on Lena's shoulders. You, my dear, are letting the imagination run away with you. You are overtired, Lena. Are you anxious? I could play on a short days for a while. No, said Lena. I'm fine. I am, but I don't know what to do about it. She gestured toward the paper. Never mind, said Captain Fleary. Don't think about it. Throw it away. You're worrying too much. I know. We all are. There's so much to worry about. We mustn't let it unsettle us. She gave Lena a long look. Her eyes were the color of the dishwasher. Help is coming, she said. Help? Yes, coming to save us. Who is? Captain Fleary bent down and lowered her voice, as if she was telling a secret. Who built our city, our dear? The builders, said Lena. That's right, and the builders will come again and show us the way. They will? Very soon, said Captain Fleary. How do you know? Captain Fleary straightened up again and clapped her hand over her heart. I know it is here, she said. And I've seen it in a dream, so have all of us, and all the believers. So that's why they believe, Lena thought, and Captain Fleary was one of them. She wondered how the captain could feel so sure about it. It just became that she'd seen it as a dream. Maybe it was the same for her as the sparkling city was for Lena. She wanted it to be true. The captain's face lit up. I know what you must do, dear. Come to one of our meetings. It would lift your heart. We sang. Oh, said Lena. Thank you, but I'm not sure. Maybe sometime. She tried to be polite, but she knew she wouldn't go. She didn't want to stand around waiting for the builders. She had other things to do. Captain Fleury patted her arm. "No pressure, dear," she said. "If you change your mind, let me know. But take my advice. Forget your little puzzle project. Lie down and take a nap. Clears the mind." Her narrow face beamed of kindness at Lena. "You take tomorrow off," she said. She raised her hand in goodbye and went downstairs. Lena took advantage of her day off to go to the supply depot, see Lizzie Biscoe. Lizzie was quick and smart. She might have some good ideas. At the supply depot, crowds of shopkeepers stood in long, disorderly lines that stretched out of the door. They pushed each other and jostled and snapped impatiently at each other. Lena joined them, but they seemed so frantic that it frightened her a little. They must be very sure now that the supplies are running out, though they are determined to get what they can before it's too late. When she got so close to the head of the line, she heard the same conversation several times. "Sorry," the clerk would say when a shopkeeper asked for 10 packets of sewing needles or a dozen drinking glasses or 20 packages of light bulbs. "There is a severe shortage in that item. You can only have one, or else," the clerk would say, "sorry, we're out entirely, forever." Lena knew that it hadn't always been this way. When Ember was a young city, storerooms were full. They held everything citizens could ever want. So much, it seems, that supplies would never run out. Lena's grandmother had told her that the school children were giving a tour of the storerooms as part of their education. They took an elevator from the street level to a long curving tunnel with doors on both sides and the other tunnel branching off of it. The guide led the tour down the long passages, opening one door after another. "This area he would say, the canned goods. Next, we'd come to the school supplies, and around this bend we have the kitchenware. Next come the carpentry tools." At each door, children crowded against each other to see. Every room had something different, Granny told Lena. Boxes of toothpaste in one room, bottles of cooking oil, bars of soap, boxes of pills. There were 20 rooms just for vitamin pills. One room was stacked with hundreds of cans of fruit. There was something called pineapple. I remember that one especially. "What was pineapple?" asked Lena. "It was yellow and sweet," said Granny, with a dreamy look in her eyes. I had it 4 times before we ran out of it. But these tours have discontinued long before Lena was born. In the storerooms, people said they were no longer a pleasure to look at. Their dusty shelves stood mostly empty now. It was rumored in some rooms nothing was left at all. A child seeing the room where powdered milk had once been stored, or the room that stored bandages or socks or pins and notebooks, or most of all, dozens of rooms that once held thousands of light bulbs, would not feel as earlier generations of children had. The Ember was endlessly rich. Today, children, if they were to tour the storerooms, would feel afraid. Thinking about this, Lena waited in line of people at Lena's station. When she got to the front she leaned forward with her elbows on the counter and whispered, "Lizzie, can I meet you after you're through with work? I'll wait for you right outside the door." Lizzie nodded eagerly. At 4 o'clock, Lizzie came trotting out of the office door. Lena said to her, "Will you come home with me for a minute? I want to show you something." "Sure," said Lizzie. As they walked, Lizzie talked. "My wrist is killing me from writing all day," she said. "You have to write the tiniest letters to save paper. I get a terrible cramp in my wrist and my fingers, and people are so rude. Today, they were even worse than ever. I said to some guy, 'You can't have 15 cans of corn. You can only have 3. And he said, 'Look, don't tell me that. I saw plenty of cans in the Pot Street Market just yesterday.' And I said, 'Well, that's why there aren't so many left today.' And he said, 'Don't be smart with me, carrot head.' But what am I supposed to do? I can't make cans of corn come out of thin air." They had passed through the Harkin Square, around the gathering hall, and down Roving Street, where they saw 3 of the floodlights were out, making a crave of shadow. Lizzie," said Lena. interrupting the flow of their talk. Is it true about the light bulbs? Is what true? That there aren't many left? Lizzie shrugged. I don't know. They hardly ever let us go downstairs into the storerooms. All we see are reports and carriers turn in with many forks in room 1146. How many doorknobs in 3291 and how many children's shoes in 2249. But when you see the report of light bulbs in rooms, what does it say? I never see that one, said Lizzie. That one and a few other ones like vitamin report, only few people can see. Who? Oh, the mayor, of course. Old flab-faced Lena looked questionably. You know Floro Benton, the head of storerooms? He is so mean, Lena. You would hate him. He counts us late if we come even 2 minutes after 8. He looks over our shoulders as we're writing, which is awful because he has bad breath, and he runs his fingers over what we've written and says, this word is illegible. That word is illegible. These numbers are illegible. It's his favorite word, illegible. When they came to Lena Street, Lena ducked her head into the door of the yarn shop. It said hello to Granny and climbed the stairs to her apartment. Lizzie was talking about how hard it was to stand up all day, how it made her knees ache, how her shoes had pinched her feet. She stopped talking long enough to say hello to Evelyn Moderato, who was sitting by the window with Poppy on her lap. And then she began to again as Lena led her into her bedroom. Lena, where were you when the big blackout came? She asked. But she went right on without waiting. I was home, luckily, but it wasn't scary, wasn't it? Lena nodded. She didn't want to talk about what happened that day. I hate those blackouts, Lizzie went on. People say there's going to be more and more of them, and someday. She stopped and frowned and stared again. Anyway, nothing bad happened to me after that. I figured out a whole new way to do my hair. It seemed to Lena that Lizzie was like a clock. It wound too tightly and fast. She's always been a little like this. But today she was more so than ever. Her gaze skipped from one spot to another. Her fingers twiddled on the edge of her shirt. She looked paler than usual. Her freckles stood a little more like smudges of dirt on her nose. Lizzie said, Lena, beckoning towards the table in the corner of the room. I want to show you. But Lizzie wasn't listening. You're so lucky to be a messenger, Lena. She said, isn't it fun? I wish my job could have been as one. I'm good at it. My job is so boring. Lena turned back to look at her. Isn't there anything you like about it? Lizzie pursed her lips in a tiny smile and looked sideways at Lena. There's one thing. What? I can't tell you, it's a secret. Oh, said Lena. Then you shouldn't have mentioned it at all, she thought. Maybe I'll tell you someday, said Lizzie. I don't know. Well, I like my job, said Lena. But I always wanted to talk to you about what I found yesterday. It's this. She lifted the box up and took the piece of paper covering the patched together document. Lizzie gave it a quick look. It was a message someone gave you. That got torn up. No, it was in her closet. Poppy was chewing on it. That's why it was torn up. But look at the writing on it. Isn't it strange? Uh-huh, said Lizzie. You know who has because awful handwriting? Milo Bone. She works with me. You should see it. She's got curly tails on the Y's and the G's, and fancy loops on the capital letters. Of course, Flabface hates it and says it's illegible. Lena slid the piece of paper back over the pasted down scraps. She wondered why she had thought Lizzie would be interested in what she thought. She'd always had fun with Lizzie, but their fun was usually with games, hide and seek, tag, the kind of games where you would run and climb. Lizzie had never been much interested in anything written on paper, so Lena quietly put the document back in its place, and she sat down with Lizzie on the floor. She listened and listened until Lizzie's charter ran down. I'd better go, Lizzie said. It was fun to see you, Lena. I miss you. She stood up and fluffed her hair. What was it that you really wanted to show me? Oh, yes, fancy writing. Really nice. Lucky you found it. come and see me again soon. Alright. I get so bored in that office. Lena made the best soup for dinner that night, and Poppy spilled hers and made a big red lake on the table. Granny stared into her bowl, stirring and stirring the soup with her spoon. She didn't really eat. She didn't feel quite right, she told Lena. After a while, she wandered off to bed. Lena cleaned the kitchen quickly. As soon as her chores were out of the way, she could get back to studying her document. She washed Poppy's clothes, and she sewed buttons on that what came off of her messenger jacket. She picked up the rags and sacks of boxes that Granny had tossed out of the closet, and by this time she had put Poppy to bed. She had still almost had a half an hour to study the fragments of paper. She sat down at the desk and uncovered the document with her elbows on either side of her chin resting in her hands. Poured out. Lizzie and Captain Fleury had paid it no attention. Lena still thought this torn-up page must be important. What else would have it been? Cleverly fastened in a box. Maybe it should have been show it to the mayor, she thought reluctantly. She didn't like the mayor. She didn't trust him either. But if this document was important to the future of the city, he was the only one who should know about it. Of course, she shouldn't ask the mayor to come to her house. She pictured him puffing up the stairs, squeezing through the door, and looked disapprovingly at the clutter in their house. Recoiling from Poppy's sticky hands, no, it wouldn't do. But she didn't want to take her carefully patched together document to Gathering Hall. It was too fragile, and the best thing to do, she decided, was to write the mayor a note. She settled down to write this. She found it fairly unspoiled, half piece of paper, and used a plain pencil. She wasn't going to waste the color ones on the mayor. She wrote, "Dear Mayor Cole, I have discovered a document in a way that is in a closet. The instructions for something. I believe it's important because it was written in very old printing. Unfortunately, I got it chewed up by my sister, so it's not all there. But you can still read some bits of it, such as marked with E, find the door, bow, small steel pan. I will show you the document if you want to see it. Sincerely yours, Lena May Fleet, Messenger, 34 Quillen Square." She folded the note in half and wrote Mayor Cole on the front. On her way to work the next morning, she took it to Gathering Hall. No one was sitting in the guard's desk, so Lena left the note there in place the guard would see it when it arrived. Then, feeling that she had done her duty, she went off to the station. Several days went by. The messages Lena carried were by full worry and fear. "Do you have any extra baby drink? I can't find it at the store. Have you heard what they're saying about the generator? We can't come tonight, Grandpa B. We won't get out of bed." Every day when she got home from work, Lena asked Granny, "Did a message come from me?" But there was nothing. Maybe the mayor had gotten a note. Maybe after a week, Lena decided she was tired of waiting. If the mayor wasn't interested, she found it was too bad for him. She was interested. She could figure it out herself. Twice during the week, when Poppy and Granny were both asleep, she had a little free time. She had spent this time making a copy of the document in case anything happened to the fragile original. It had been taking her a long time. She used the few remaining pieces of paper and an old label slightly torn from a can of peas. She copied as accurate as she could and made it missing bits between the letters and carefully catched at dashes. She had tucked it under the mattress of her bed for safekeeping. Now she had finally had a full free evening. Poppy and Granny were both asleep and the apartment was tidy. Lena sat down at the table and uncovered the patched together document. She had tied her hair back so it wouldn't keep falling in her face. She put a piece of paper next to her, blank except for a little bit of Poppy scribbling, to write down what she decoded. She started with the title. The first word she had already figured out. It had to be instructions. The next word could be floor, and then came ergs. She wasn't sure about that. Maybe it was someone's name. Egerston, instructions for Egerston. She decided to call it the instructions for short. She went on the first line of the official doc, probably meant the official document. Maybe secure meant secure or security. Then there was words period, ears, and city. But after that, so much was missing, she studied the next line for next to the number 1. That could be expect or expert, or so many things. She moved on to riv. That may be a part of the word like drive or strive. What could IP or orc possibly be? They were so close together, maybe it was part of one word. She ended with ip, whip, Lena thought. Trip, slip. What ended with orc? Fork came to mind immediately. Trip, fork, slip, fork. Nothing could work of make sense. Or it made sense. Maybe it wasn't fork. What else ended in orc? She started at the beginning of the alphabet. Lena went on throughout the words and rhymed with fork. Most of them were nonsense. Bork, dork, gork, hork, jork. This wasn't going to work. She thought miserably. Oh, work. That word could be work. Then what would the first part be? Trip work, flip work. Maybe it was P and the word was dips work, pipes work. Suddenly it came to her, pipe work, pipes work. That had to be it. Something about the message was pipe works. Lena looked back at EXP and RIV. That could be river rapidly. She ran her eyes down the page in the line 3. She saw IVERBNK. That looked like riverbank. The word door jumped out of her on line 4. It was a scrap of paper. Lena took a big breath. A door. What if it's the one that she wished for that led her to the other city? Maybe the city was real after all. These instructions for finding it. She wanted to leap from her chair and shout the message to do with the river, door, and pipeworks. And who did she know about pipeworks? June, of course. She pictured this thin, serious face and eyes looking stretchingly beneath his dark eyebrows. She pictured how he used to bend over his work in school, holding his pencil in a hard grip, and how during free time he is usually off by himself in a corner studying a moth or a worm or taking apart a clock. That was one thing at least she liked about Dude. He was curious, he paid attention to things, and he cared about things too. She remembered how he been on assignment day, so furious that the mayor is so eager to trade his good job for a bad one. He could help save the city, and he'd taken Poppy inside his father's shop on the day of the blackout so she wouldn't be afraid. Why had she stopped being friends with Doom? She vaguely recalled the incident of the light pole. It seemed about Doom that it was more the only person who might be interested in what she found. She placed a plain piece of paper over the instructions and put the box top and found Doom. She thought tomorrow was Thursday, their day off. She would find him tomorrow and ask for his help. The end. Bye.